A couple days ago on stream, I was asked the question, what things do I like about World of Warcraft that I wish were in Final Fantasy, and vice versa? And you know what? The answer to that question is actually a lot of things. Now, before getting to play World of Warcraft, there were things in Final Fantasy XIV that I wish got implemented. But I always brushed that off as, you know what, things aren't that bad, I can just deal with it. But after getting to play World of Warcraft, my opinions definitely changed. So with that said, let's just go ahead and get to our first topic, which is the gearing. Now, gearing in Final Fantasy is very linear. You go from your mix of crafted and normal raid gear, straight to your tome and raid gear, and finally, augmenting your tome gear with the tokens from the raid. And that's it. Final Fantasy's gearing is a very small process. There's no alternate ways to get gear. You craft, then raid until you're bis. Early in the expansion, we did get one piece of content called the Chaotic Raid, which did give us alternate options of gear that ended up being bis for some classes. But ever since then, we haven't gotten anything like that. We got a new Criterion dungeon, but all the gear you can get from there is purely cosmetic. WoW's gearing system, on the other hand, is plentiful when you're looking to get geared up. There are so many options, and each of them provides numerous ways of getting stronger each week. And you know what? I like that. Not only does it give me variety so I don't get bored whenever trying to gear my characters, but it also forces me to make decisions on what gear I actually want to upgrade. Because upgrade materials are limited in World of Warcraft, you have to actually plan how you're going to spend your time on getting that gear and how you're going to spend your resources so you're actually getting stronger in each week. In other words, not only is the system more interactive, but the strength my character is gaining from week to week feels tangible. It's almost addicting. Which leads me to the next topic, and that's the weekly grind. Both Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft have a weekly grind. And you know what? They're different. I don't particularly like one over the other, but what I absolutely hate about Final Fantasy is that if I don't log in for that week to cap out on my resources, I just don't get them at all. In World of Warcraft, on the other hand, I can stay logged out for numerous weeks, but I do have the opportunity to gather all those resources that I missed out on. Not only that, but if I ever decide to make a second character, which at this point I have multiple, I get the chance to grind out all the resources that I missed out on from the start of the expansion. Now, Final Fantasy makes up for this a little bit by the fact that we can do almost everything we want on just one character. But if you have any intention to do split reclears, you have to maintain at least 2, and that is absolutely garbage. And this is going to sound crazy to World of Warcraft players, but whenever you create an alt account in Final Fantasy, you have to do the entire story all over again. And the worst part is, you can skip it with money, but that's a completely separate purchase from the job skips that are also available on the store. Which actually reminds me, did you know in Final Fantasy that if you buy cosmetics for one character, it's only for that character? And you know what? I couldn't even tell you what's worse. The fact that we can only use it on one character, or the fact that I've actually bought the same set of cosmetic twice. Regardless, as friendly as Final Fantasy is on one character, it is very unfriendly once you start to work on your second or third character. But to be honest with you, it's not as bad as I'm making it seem, because in all honesty, Final Fantasy doesn't really give you the need to make a second character if you're not planning on doing splits at all. Speaking of splits, let's talk about the raiding in both MMOs. Now, you might think I'm very basic for saying this, but I do share the opinion with a lot of other people when I say Final Fantasy has some of the best raids that I've ever done in any MMO. But to be honest with you, I'm having a lot of fun raiding in WoW. But before we get more deep into that, I have to talk about the lockouts. Now, earlier I said Final Fantasy doesn't really have a lot of content for us to get gear in. So for me, a lot of my fun has come from reclearing the savage fights over and over again. And after I'm done getting my loot for the week, I like to go back into these fights just to practice my rotation and hit the boss. And this is something that just does not exist in World of Warcraft, at least when we talk about Mythic. Now, pugging Mythic is its own beast, but essentially, when you go into a Mythic lockout and kill a boss, you are locked to that ID. And what that means is that you are intended to kill the next set of bosses with the same set of people. As you can imagine, World of Warcraft has a ton of players who are either impatient or unprepared. And the chances that you get both of those groups of people in the same instance is very high, and the group blows up really fast. So you can probably imagine that I was extremely upset when I found out on Tuesday that after I killed the first boss of Voidspire and my group blew up, I could not continue raiding till the next week. Now, there is a way around the WoW lockout system, and it has to do with splits. And if you create more characters, you get to raid more. But to be honest, the only reason I should ever have to make a new character in an MMO is if I want to try out a different class. I should be able to raid as much as I want with no restrictions. I don't even need the loot. I just want to hit the boss more. Which leads us to kind of a part 2 of this conversation, which is accessibility, and that getting into raiding in World of Warcraft just isn't as easy as Final Fantasy. I'm gonna try not to repeat myself too much, but essentially, with the way these lockouts work, the most efficient use of our time is to spend that time raiding with a guild. And some people don't even want to pursue that option, which is completely understandable. For me, it's not that big of a problem because I always look forward to raiding and I will make the time for it. But in Final Fantasy, I do like having the option of getting to play a little more or a little less and not having to worry if I'm going to screw up my character for a little bit more practice. Which leads me to the actual raiding itself. Now, raiding in Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft is very different. As I said before, I think they're difficult for their own reasons, but sometimes those reasons are really stupid. And yes, I'm talking about add-ons. For the record, I don't think add-ons are bad in either game. But whenever Blizzard makes mechanics that forces the community to use add-ons, especially during the expansion where they say they want to completely get rid of them, you can imagine that when they just show up anyway, it kind of just takes the fun out of raiding. The easiest example I can give is Mythic Salhadar. He has a mechanic that, to be honest, I can't even tell you the name of. It's the ad phase where you have to CC ads in a specific order, but telling that order is insanely difficult for no reason, and we use an add-on called Northern Sky Rating Tools to just put a big CC over the ad. And I think you could kind of point out the red flag there, that I can't even tell you how to solve the mechanic, because the way I was taught and the way they say to do it in guides is interrupt the one that the add-on tells you. Like, I'm not even kidding. I'm scrolling through YouTube right now and have watched a couple of videos to do some research, and none of them tell me how to do the mechanic. They just tell me to use the add-on. For major contrast, in Final Fantasy, add-ons are generally frowned upon. You can still use them, but it's more of a keep it to yourself kind of thing. But the fights in 14 are designed and have been completed with no add-ons at all. Instead, it is up for these groups to come up with effective ways to communicate and create intuitive solutions. Now, of course, this exists in World of Warcraft, but when developers are making mechanics like this, I can't really fault World of Warcraft players for turning to add-ons. And from what I understand, this happens quite a lot. Besides all that, I'm completely fine with add-ons being used in both games, and I think they provide a ton of quality of life that makes raiding way more enjoyable. I also like customizing my HUD. I've kind of gotten really deep into it. Thank you, Mans, for teaching me. You're the GOAT. But beyond all the add-ons, let's talk purely fight design and which one I like more. Now, both Blizzard and Square Enix have very different fight philosophies. I think Preach said it best in his comparison video, where Final Fantasy is more like synchronized swimming or dancing, and World of Warcraft feels more like a bull pit. Something about both of those styles is really appealing to me, but let's go over them one by one. Final Fantasy's fights are very scripted. We're gonna get the same set of mechanics in the same order every single time. But of course, there's different permutations that we have to be aware of, and I have a solution for each one. But oftentimes the solutions are intuitive because they're either solved in pairs, groups, or roles. There is the rare case that sometimes we get mechanics that are just fully random and we have to figure out a priority system anyways, but that's not really Final Fantasy style. But on the other hand, this is completely World of Warcraft style. Generally speaking, everyone should know how to solve every mechanic in the event they are selected to solve it. For example, the 4th bosses of the Voidspire series, Veilgor and Ezrak, have mechanics called Dread Breath and Gloom. Dread Breath can target anyone at any time and is a frontal cone that will fear the player and anyone in the cone. Gloom shoots out in a straight line and needs to be soaked by a certain number of players so it doesn't expand bigger than what is considered dangerous. It's important to know what both of these are, because if you get selected for Dread Breath, you need to be prepared to resolve it so you don't fear the entire raid. If one of your soakers for Gloom gets destroyed, you need someone as backup. I've always found fight design like this to be really fun and engaging, and in Final Fantasy, the majority of the fights aren't really like this. But that's not to say that having role-specific responsibilities makes the game boring. One of the best raids we've ever gotten in Final Fantasy XIV history is the Dragon Songs Reprise Ultimate. And in DSR, one of the most fun roles you can play is tank, because they just have so many different things to do, and it definitely feels like you're the main character of that raid. I mean, just take a look at this. This is a clip from the final phase of DSR King Thordan. And King Thornton has a mechanic called Ogmorn, where essentially we have 3 sets of towers that we need to soak, and damage is shared by each person in the tower. And the most popular strat to resolve this is 6-1-1. This is where we take 6 non-tanks, put them in the northwest tower, and put each tank in their own tower. Now, whichever tank is using their immunity will stand in the south tower, and the other tank will use all of their mitigation they have and take that shared damage solo. Now, it's moments like this in Final Fantasy that always give me a rush, and to be honest with you, I haven't quite experienced something like that in World of Warcraft, but maybe we can blame that on the fact that I've only been raiding since the start of midnight, so I'll keep my eyes peeled. And that's pretty much what I like about each game. Obviously there's going to be a bit more here and there, but those more or less aren't really related to the end game and progression. So if you have any idea on what topics I should cover next, please let me know down in the comments below, or join my Discord and DM me directly. Also, make sure to check out my live streams, where I'm either in the Ultimate Party Finder or I've been starting to push some keys. I think the highest key that I pushed so far is a 17, but I'm going to try to get to 20, so don't miss out on that. And hey, don't forget to like and subscribe, that way you don't miss out on the next upload. It's not every day that a Final Fantasy player jumps into World of Warcraft and vice versa, so you don't want to miss out on what I have cooking up for the future. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.